Hello, everyone. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I am here with a group of some of my favorite people. And we all decided to come together to talk about how we can utilize the moon and evolve it through the houses and the signs. This is something that, to my knowledge, really hasn't been talked about as a series on the EA Zoom channel. And what I want to say about this is that it is such a paramount archetype. We only evolve through our emotional body, and therefore it's just a really important dynamic to understand within each one of our charts. It's also one of our big threes. It's one of the ways that people feel that they can relate more to astrology. And so we really wanted to come together to talk about how we can evolve the moon through the houses and the signs. And I also wanted to say that this was really inspired by my friend Deva Green, who's such a beautiful soul. And I have just been devouring her book, The Moon and its Nodes in Evolutionary Astrology. And it goes into each one of the archetypes of the moon through the houses and the signs, and then also talks about the different stages of evolution and how that can show up, and also the nodes. And so I wanted to see, Deva, if you wanted to talk a little bit about this before we all start. Deva, are you comfortable with that?
Well, thanks so much. Yeah, I mean, of course, in terms of bridging into it or a little bit of intro in terms of the moon, from my understanding, it's really paramount, as you're saying, because it reflects the bridge from the past to the future and how we're going to be nurturing ourselves when we are experiencing the need to emotionally shift. And that can be challenging for every one of us because of the insecurity or the vulnerability that it brings, the need for change. And so, from my perspective, when we look at the moon, it's really how we go about day to day nurturing ourselves through the insecurity and the vulnerabilities of change, and how we can then utilize that as a tool for ourselves and others when we feel drawn towards the future and we need to motivate ourselves or we need to nurture ourselves through the difficulties that come up through that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Deva. And Sue, if you will, I want to introduce everyone and I want to do it in a really fun way. So will you go to the next slide, please? We thought, me and Kristin were talking about this, and if you see Kristin's pictures up here, it is this fiery soul playing soccer. But we thought that it would be really cool, since we're talking about the moon, to show each one of our pictures when we were in our adolescence, and maybe just to have like a couple of seconds to speak about what we're seeing. So the first person up would be Kristin Fontana. What would you like to say?
Well, I definitely grew up as a tomboy. I didn't want to be a girl at all. I wore all my brother's hand-me-downs, Levi cords and hang ten shirts and Vans. Um, and eventually I wanted to be a girl when I became a girl officially, I guess, as you say, through my teens, early teens. But this picture was in my late teens, so not so much adolescence. And I have an Aries moon, which we're talking about today. And I mean, this just feels like me. I just feel like God made me to be a warrior, you know, and soccer allows you to just be totally free and aggressive and competitive, but also to work within a team, to have a common goal. And so I just, until I really found this work, sports were my outlet. They were the way for me to experience myself without inhibition. And it was a one place I could go to, or a space I could be in, where none of my I guess none of none of my fears were in place, none of the resistance, none of my skip steps were being activated. I was just totally free. That's all I can say. No conditioning, nothing. It was just Kristin free. So, once I wasn't on the field, maybe I was acting more conditioned in the world, but not when I was on the field. I was 100% Aries moon. So at my happiest and probably even at my best. So
I love that. And that looks like an Aries moon in that picture. I'm just gonna say. Joe, what about you? This is someone new to EA that we wanted to bring on, especially for this show. At first, we thought about having all women, and then Kristin came up with a great idea to have Joe come on board, so that we have some masculine energy that's reflected in a really healthy and natural way. So, Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about your picture?
Sure, I'd love to. Just following on from what Kristin said about we both have an Aries moon, I think my picture tells the story of how uncompetitive, unchasing the ball and unsportsy I really was. And I think, I'm not sure, maybe I was 17 in this photo. And I don't think any of my friends dressed the way I did, and they didn't like any of the music I did. But we had a holiday day for the wedding of Charles and Diana, so it's going back quite some
Oh,
years,
wow.
and we had lots of street parties. So this was at the street party, and we had fancy dress. So I decided to come as myself and sort of show the side of me that I wouldn't normally wear walking through a street in Bristol, because I would be seen automatically as is not macho enough and not competitive enough. Someone would capitalize on that. So I've always seen myself as being a very gentle soul. Um, a lot of Cancer energy in my chart as well, a lot of water energy, and that really kind of magnifies with my moon being in my first being in Aries. What can I say?
Joe, what kind of music did you listen to?
Oh my God, this was just before the phase when I decided I was going to be Bob Dylan, right? I was
Perfect.
right here. Well, there's lots of kind of Jesus kind of stickers on my guitar, and I was going to church with my family. We were going to the Catholic church, and this was a very big thing for us. Easter every year, we lived there, for the whole week. There was really no going home, so much going on. So a lot of the music that I was playing was kind of folky music that we were playing in our youth group or in church. And I was kind of comfortable with that. But the music I liked to play on my own, the first song, in fact, the song that I taught myself to play the guitar with was House of the Rising Sun, by the Animals. And you have to be of a certain age to remember most of these musical references that I come out with these days. But yeah, the Animals, I loved Bob Dylan, Neil Young, Judy Collins, all of the kind of 1960s Crosby, Stills and Nash, 60s folk music. Arlo Guthrie was a kind of icon of mine. I had a hat like his for a while. So yeah, maybe the part of the journey for me at that time was trying to find out who I was by experimenting with being other people a little bit.
I love that.
What about
Deva. Oh, sorry, Kristin,
I was
what were
gonna
you gonna
say,
say?
I don't know if you were next. I don't know. You can go ahead and
I was gonna go last.
okay, that's good.
Deva, do you want to talk about your picture?
Yeah, I've got natally moon in Cancer, and I'm at I'm at my best when I can nurture, when I feel safe to grab something, give it a hug, give it some lunar or some mother energy. And that little guy, I still remember that cat very well. His name was Galen, and he needed a mom very, very much.
Aw.
I had him since he was a kitten, and he felt abandoned by his birth mom, I could tell. and we locked eyes, and he just he ran right into my arms, and it really suited my Cancer energy because I could nurture him and be a little kitty mom for him. And I feel that that really reflects my Cancer moon, because that's when I'm feeling at my best and brightest and most secure, is when I can manifest that type of universal mother energy.
Aw,
I love that. You
ew.
can tell too, Deva.
What's that?
Aw, I said you can tell too.
Oh,
I have to tell you guys this great thing that I have a 150-pound Mastiff, and whenever Deva comes to visit, he does like 360s around her. He can't get close enough. He's like
Oh.
3 times the size of her. He loves Deva so much. Anyway, a natural with animals for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right, Rob, you're up. Tell us about your pick.
I will. I was just gonna say, Davis' picture, you're just radiating like the sun. Like there's just like heat coming out. It's a beautiful picture. So mine's Davis a Cancer sun, right? Yeah.
Cancer,
I'm a Capricorn moon. Capricorn, sorry, sun, Capricorn.
Cancer moon she has, yeah.
Cancer moon, sorry, yeah. I'm a Capricorn moon. And this picture was taken, I think I was 18, yeah. My first ever trip abroad, and it was in Greece. So this is taken in Athens, visiting the Parthenon. And at the time, this is way before astrology came into my life or anything like that. If I look back, I can see it was a start of exploring different civilizations and interest in not just history in the sense of how the world has listed history, but more in terms of stuff that's been hidden, you know, kind of the civilizations, the key messages that were distorted in the world. And yeah, that I feel that was the subject I took, was classical civilization. And that introduced knowledge of the Greek mythology, Greek goddesses, you know, all the tragedies I had to read, etc. And I remember also, and I've had this little beauty with me since I was that visit, and it's a statue of the goddess Athena, who actually rules Aries. And incidentally, my Pluto is in the first house. So I do have a very strong Aries in terms of my Pluto. So yeah, in terms of Capricorn, kind of, I look at it as self-mastery and taking self-responsibility within my own life, which came later on in my life, post my first Saturn return, hence, you know, Saturn being the ruler of my moon. So yeah, and it's just continues to open doors in terms of information that I'm learning about culture, civilizations, and going back to the core essential truth, which has been a huge passion of mine. So yeah, I think that picture of a very innocent 18-year-old who had no idea where life was going to go, I'll tell you now, that girl had a different plan, a different idea. But then, you know, they say, you know, man plans and God laughs. That's essentially what happened. So yeah, I got taken down a whole different path, which I wouldn't change for the world.
Love that. Stacie, I
Well,
want to hear about this.
right. This picture, I was about 15 and in full-blown hiding. That's kind of my story. I have a Pisces moon, and I spent the better part of, you know, up through my Saturn return almost in complete hiding, trying to live an illusion of glamorization because that's what society valued. And so you can just kind of see that in my appearance. However, the one thing that has been a constant for me in terms of accessing my natural identity is animals, my relationship to animals. And the relationship that I had with this bird was very profound. This was back in the day, unfortunately, when there was a lot of pets on the market were wild caught, and this was a wild caught bird. But we developed such an amazing relationship. He trusted me so much and brought me a lot of joy. He was my best friend, and So that was my little retreat from the life of just being a picture. And
Mm.
I've come a long way. I've done a lot of work on recovering my natural nature and having the courage to present it to the world, to own it. And so I look at this and it's like, whoa. It's just kind of a testament to how far I've come.
Mhm.
Well, I know you closely, and I can definitely vouch for you on that, Stacie. So I love that picture. I love whenever Stacie sent it to me, the first thing she said was like, look at all that makeup. And like we joked, because I have my pictures. If you were to go back on my social media, you can tell how long I hid out too by like the full glam. So I understand that. Okay, so this is my horse Red, and I am a Libra moon. And I have to say, I'm a Libra moon in the 6th house. And I feel like that's really important for me to speak about, because my animals, growing up, I had a ranch, and it's where I could be a boy and a girl, if that makes sense. It's where I could embody both, where like ranch hands, they gave me jobs that they would give the men there. And I always wanted to be in service. But then also when we were taking on orphan animals, or because a lot of times cows, you know, they will orphan their babies. And so I would be the one who would go out and get them if it was from another ranch, and then take care of them. But this is a horse that's a working horse. He helped us do our jobs. You know, I was very close to him. I rode him bareback. You can't tell, but I had just rode him bareback in this picture. And he just, you know, he was one of my best friends, and I felt one with him whenever we were together. And I felt that he helped me just as much as I helped him, even when navigating those jobs, you know. He could feel whenever I needed him to do something, and it was just the pure emotion of it. And so, yeah, that's really what I can say is that's my picture with my horse Red. So, do we want to go to the next slide?
Sounds good.
All right. So, today we are talking about an Aries moon. And so, in order to really understand this, we want to talk about the strengths and vulnerabilities, what nurtures and what empowers. And also, I think it's really good. We live in a plane of existence that is about polarities. And so if we're talking about what nurtures and empowers, we also need to talk a little bit about what does this moon look like whenever it's suppressed or it's not being nurtured or empowered. And so Kristin gave me this picture of the cardinal cross, and I figured that I would let you take it away, Kristin, and then all of us can kind of, you know, talk about this.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you cannot look at an Aries moon or the moon in the 1st house and without including the axis here, the cardinal axis in particular, and when it's in stress, what happens. And you know, my favorite example is when you take a beach ball and you're in the swimming pool. It's the summer and you're playing around, and I just remember I would try and submerge that beach ball underwater to see how long I can hold on to it, just playing around. And the same is true when you're trying to suppress emotion or contain it in any way. You can see that through the motion being Cancer, so the square to Cancer, and on the other side, the Aries moon squaring Capricorn. When you're suppressing emotion, you cannot hold on to it for very long, the beach ball that is, before it will like dart out and hit someone in the head, or, you know, we eventually will lose control of whatever it is that we're trying to suppress. And what Jeffrey Wolf Green taught was that anything that you repress becomes distorted, right? You know, you didn't have that intention of hitting that person in the head over there. But by not allowing natural emotion to flow, if we're feeling an Aries moon is feeling limited in any way or blocked or thwarted and not given, enough space to express themselves or to experience that freedom that we need emotionally, then, and when it's in stress, it can come out and dart out in very aggressive or angry ways sometimes. So it's important for anyone who has moon in the first house or an Aries moon to understand what happens in their emotional body, how it affects anyone in their midst, when they aren't allowed to naturally process the emotion. Also, projections can happen. That's the polarity to Libra. You can project what you're feeling onto another, and the closest target might receive that, and that's no fun for the other person either. And so for all the houses and signs and the moon and every single archetype, when it's under stress, it's going to behave in a certain way, or you're going to experience them in a certain way. And of course, we all know with the archetype of Aries, it can come out as a reactivity. The Aries moon is learning the art of response and not reaction. So that's what happens when it is under stress. But there are so many strengths of the Aries moon: a natural leadership capacity, and somebody who is very instinctually able to take things on, doesn't hesitate, kind of fearless when it's in full motion, or just given that freedom. It can be a very fearless emotional place for the moon. So Joe, you have an Aries moon. What would you say? What is your favorite thing about your Aries moon?
Favorite thing?
Yeah, what do you love most about your moon in Aries,
Um,
or value?
I think what it does for me, so in the way I see myself, yeah, it creates this sense of everything I do is who I am.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
I'm continually stepping into new adventures in my life. If I think about where I'm going as my future becoming, I start to become that right now because I identify with it. And I think, this kind of Aries Mars energy about the soul's desires, I've learned to understand it's not ambition. I'm going to go get a new job, or I'm going to get a new car, or I never really follow those things, but I find myself drawn to being something, expressing some part of myself that maybe I haven't yet discovered. I don't think I go back very much, but it's like
yeah,
everything is new.
that's right. I love that you said drawn to the adventure. That is so true about Aries. Like, we thrive on that. And that's such an important point that you just brought up. A moon in Aries soul, or the moon in the first house, we do rarely look back. I mean, and if anything, I have to force myself to stop and look back to see, just like Stacie was talking about her picture. A picture does say, what, 1,000 words, that you're like, wow, look where I was then, look where I am now. So it is important, as the Aries moon evolves, to stop on the climb and say, wow, look, what have I done on this journey? It's important to reflect about that instead of always being on the front foot, always moving fast forward, always chasing the next adventure. I mean, that pause, that slowdown is really important for the evolution of that fire, of that desire that is coming from the soul, right? So I love that, Joe, drawn to the adventure, the next adventure, for sure.
I like that Joe said, pretty much, I mean, I'm not using your words, but you were talking about the instinct of even going to the next thing, or even your picture when you were younger, how you were like, I was being this person and that person while I was discovering myself. I feel like a lot of times when I see Aries moons, they are always revamping themselves. It's almost like they have these mini identity crises, not like existential ones. I mean, I guess they could be, depending on how far off the path you've gotten, but it's always wanting to almost revamp oneself, to figure out, like, it's the perpetual, who am I? What am I? That question all the time. And I often see these people being trailblazers as well. in the sense that they have a natural leadership, even if they're a quiet leader, you know, they are always having this fearlessness to, okay, well, this doesn't feel right anymore. It doesn't feel like who I am. And so now they're going to go to the next thing. And it really shows people that, hey, that can be done, you know, and there's nothing wrong with this. And so there's a leadership quality about it that I see oftentimes. So yeah.
Yeah, a
But
perpetual state
also,
of self-discovery. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just
Yeah.
going to say, yeah, there's a perpetual state of self-discovery. It's always drawn to that flame of
but
self-discovery.
that's because Kristin, that it's that whole cardinal energy, right? Of 2 steps forward, then 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So though it's
True.
moving forwards, you know, it's that instinct, but that fear part comes in because it is ruled by Mars, which is the lower octave of Pluto. So that when that fear part comes in, it's that 1 step back, but then again 2 steps forward, but it's still evolving. So it's still moving forwards instinctively.
Right.
Then it's learning through its experiences. This, not that, this, not that. So it's,
Exactly.
you know, it's that all cardinal energy that you spoke about, and it's linking it back to those cardinal houses in the chart, that it will evolve in that kind of way.
What happens there, if you think about the desire, and Pluto rules the root chakra, right? And so if the desire comes from the root of who you are, and it starts, and in the Aries moon's going forward like this. So they're in motion, and at the solar plexus, Pluto, Mars rule the solar plexus. That desire can come straight up from the root at the solar plexus and then freak out once it's like gone too far. And that's really where it drops back down, because that whole bottom triangle, 1, 2, 3, those chakras, you know, you're bringing it back to then Saturn rules that outer ring of the root. And it's then you're like, what did I do? I just went too far. So there's your 1 step back. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Deva, I want you to share on something in just a second that I'm recalling that you wrote about in your book, but there's a really great quote that reminds me of an Aries moon, and it's by Mike Tyson. And I say this so often, and he says, you can't get rid of the fear, but you can ride the fear. And so sometimes I feel like with an Aries moon, that can be really motivating. If they're tapping into Capricorn and Cancer, and they're feeling into their gut, and then they're like, okay, they're being self-determined to, I can't really get rid of this, but it's like Mike Tyson said, I can ride this wave of whatever's coming up in me. And that's also where I feel like where you see these natural leadership roles. So what I want to ask Deva about is, in her book, she talks about how oftentimes people with an Aries moon, when they're pulling in the cardinal axis, that they are needing to, 1, create new patterns, and 2, they are learning how to have a personal voice of authority within society. And so I wanted you to talk a little bit about that, David, because I find it really profound to understand this when looking at an Aries moon. I see this so often with Aries moons. Kristin, even you, part of your whole story has been about recovering your voice in this lifetime, and you're an Aries moon. So, Deva, will you explain that a little bit? Because I think you do it so good.
Well, it would really just be to add to the conversation. And from my understanding, what I'm feeling as I'm listening to you talk is really this emotional need to balance nurturing one's voice through independence, freedom. I need to discover this, and I'm going to have the emotional space to do it, and maintaining that space with another, primarily nurturing through helping other people nurture their own autonomy and helping them find those spaces to where they don't lose that, either within relationships, or that they also find that freedom within themselves, so it doesn't become one over or one under, to where the 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I join a relationship and then I feel that I'm restricted, and I go back. I take those 2 steps back because it's just emotionally unsettling, and I feel fear. And so it's like holding that space from my point of view, to where it's both and. I'm kind of drawing in the Libra polarity, but to where that moon in Aries really inspires others to do the same, so that there's more equality and balance in the art of navigation, or the art of negotiation. And that can be a way to navigate that 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And in terms of the role in society, it can very much be one that helps other people who don't have a voice. I think one of the most beautiful quotes is by Jane Goodall. It's, "Where I find those who don't have a voice, there I shall go singing."
Oh, I
I
love
love
that.
that.
You know, I also wanted to say that relative to the fear of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, fear, if left alone, can be an inhibiting factor in taking action. And Aries requires constant action to move forward and evolve. And that's where Capricorn is really important in the cardinal archetype, because it allows one to reflect. Reflection is Capricorn. To reflect on the nature of emotions that fear is inducing, to really clarify one's role, what is in one's power of influence or control, and to assess what kind of mistakes may have been made, different ways of approaching it, all within a natural right and wrong, not what other people say, but what is naturally right and wrong, and to focus on the goal. So that can really create a freeing influence on continuing the action.
I love that. I also feel like because Aries moons are so instinctual, it is that 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But when you're pulling in the Libra polarity, that's like being able to hear the feedback that you're receiving from the action that you're taking, and it's, are you gonna abandon yourself, or are you gonna still stay autonomous in your independence, but you're gonna use that in a responsible way to keep your momentum, to keep moving forward, to be integral, So that was another thing that I was thinking about as we were all talking about this. Okay, is there anything else we want to add to this? Kristin?
Okay. So we wanted to talk too briefly about how does an Aries moon feel nurtured? What does an Aries moon need to nurture that fire, to nurture a space of replenishment, a space of security, what comforts? And Joe, I love how you talked about the fire. I mean, fire, to sit by a fire, like a natural fire, it just takes me back lifetimes, and it is vital. I mean, for my state of balance. And Joe, talk about what you were sharing the other day when we were readying ourselves for this, about the fire and how that nurtures the Aries moon for you.
Oh, absolutely. Well, there are 2 things that nurture me. One, you think moon, water. So, and I don't want to talk about the fire without mentioning the water.
Yeah.
Water for me is such a harmonizing element. But fire, right? So I've got a little candle burning in this bowl here now. It's just a miniature version of a fire, but it's still a fire. And what I love to do is just to bring my hand, whether it's a candle or a fire, right? And you can do it with a real fire, as long as you know it's friendly. You let the fire die down a bit and just bring the fire into your body, feed your body with the fire into your belly, like your place of power, and your heart. To empower our center of love, because you have the power to do things, but it's got to be balanced by love for me. And then to bring it into my mind. And I just find fire, I could sit with it all the time. I think about lighting the fire within. I do little fire ceremonies for myself at the full moon and the new moon. Just to kind of align with the harmony of that 28-day cycle and the archetypical energy. For me, the moon, it's the 2 things we can really see in the sky, isn't it? We've got the sun, and well, there we go. We've got the fire and the water. We've got the sun and the moon, and just calling in that relationship. I never really, until recently, never really appreciated the position of the moon in my chart. You know, in the beginning, I suppose with astrology, first things I found out were as a kid, and someone said, "Oh, you're born in July, so you're Cancerian," and that was it. And we had the little magazines, you know, or the newspapers, and there'd be a column, your forecast, your horoscope, and I believed all of it for a while, and I thought it's just like eating a cracker when you're hungry, and then 2 minutes later you think, I'm still starving. It just hasn't filled me up. And the moon, I don't know, it just, I'm beginning to understand myself so much more by understanding the influence of the moon in my chart and in my life. And even like it's a learning experience all the time, but just discovering things like, you know, wondering why is it that fire feels so nourishing when fire is a force that combusts, it eats everything that we give it. Yeah, it feeds on everything, whether it's sticks or paper or whatever it is, and it reduces it to nothing. It consumes it completely. And yet I feel it's nourishing. It doesn't destroy me. It warms me. It feeds, it like nourishes the seeds of my future becoming, my desires, my ambitions.
Yeah, fire is the greatest purifier also. So by sitting by it, it can purify any negativity, all the energy within you that just you don't want around. It just has a way, you know, just like burning incense or something else, you feel like that's cleaning the energy. I mean, fire just has a magical, immediate way of doing that. And by taking it in, it can have a way of clearing what's inside of us as well.
Yeah, we think of all this, you know, the negative stuff is a burden to carry because we can't digest it, we can't process it or release it easily on our own. But it's just like putting your potato peelings or something into the compost, right? I'm not going to enjoy making a second cup of tea from my tea bag or trying to make another cup of coffee from my coffee grounds. It just doesn't work so well. But if I put stuff into the compost, right? It breaks down, makes lovely soil that I can grow nice things in, and they're delicious. And the same thing with the fire. You can give fire all of this stuff, all of our heaviness, whatever's worrying you or in your body that's weighing you down, and the fire will feed on it. The fire loves it. And where did that stick go? We're looking for all my troubles were in that one stick. Where did my stick? I need to get another. Make sure I really let go of them. I'll call it back so I can let go of it.
That's
But
great.
fire.
Well, Joe, a great technique for anybody, but I think for an Aries moon, I don't know if you guys have done it, Kristin, but you know, if you're getting angry and you're just getting angry, but if you write down what you're feeling and then burn that letter, I feel like it kind of metamorphosizes and releases that, and it kind of feels like you've physically done something rather than getting angry at the other person. But just, you know, it's natural to feel anger, but it's how you express that anger that needs to be dealt with, and it's that balance, you know, that Libra polarity. And I know you guys said fire is really, you know, healing. I have a Mars in Cancer, and when you guys were just talking about fire, I'm sitting here going, oh my God, yeah, I like that too, but I'm a Capricorn moon. But then I have a Mars in Cancer, which has that same energy in the 10th
Yeah.
house. So for myself as well, that nurtures me so much. Just, you know, looking at the moon, like I've always been a moon gal. And you talk about the newspapers, you're right. I say to people, they'll say, I'm a so-and-so sun sign. My response to them is, what's your moon sign? Find out your moon sign, then you'll get to the, you know, the crux of how you are, how you relate to life emotionally. So yeah, just what you said, I totally resonated with that.
If you give stuff like that to a fire, then I think it helps to deal with the sort of polarity between is it me? Am I angry with myself? Am I frustrated? Or is it this other person? Am I really angry because of what they're done? Because that's so easy to project that out. And most of the time we don't know. And if we just take it and put it away, give it to the fire or something, or however you do it. You know, maybe water is really your element and you swim in the water, or you stand on a mountain and let the wind blow it away, or just bury your feet in the earth. However you do it, I think it gives that clarity that allows us to know, do you know what is my frustration? You know, not someone else's doing something that's frustrating me.
Yeah, self-responsibility.
Yeah. but something simple like that. And just, I think, understanding the importance, not just of the sun, because we know about the sun and it's there, whether we can see it or not, it's there all the time. And the moon comes and goes, and she's got a different nature at different times of the month.
Yeah.
True, true. Wow. Yeah. Okay, Jordyn. I think
Yeah,
that's a wrap. What were you
what?
gonna say? Oh, I thought that was a wrap, but we can
No,
say
I feel like that's an organic place to move to Joe's chart. Where is it Joe's chart yet? I can't remember. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Kristin, I'm gonna let you take this one away since you and Joe have talked so much about this.
Okay.
So yeah.
Well, you all know the story now, and I'd like Joe to share with our listeners just an incredible wow, we've got some transits to show you as well. But just last month, Joe shared a story with me that involves this Aries moon, and I would say this 29-degree Aries moon, wow, anaretic degree and all. And so Joe, why don't you go ahead and let people know what happened on June 10th, 2024.
Yeah, so just over 4 weeks ago. Well, I thought the big events of this year were coming through my second Saturn return and celebrating my 60th birthday. So it was a complete surprise when another event crossed my path, and I had a message out of the blue through Facebook. So, first of all, I had to say yes, accept the message request, and there's this message from someone who I didn't really recognize, didn't know, and they just asked me one question. They said, was I living in Bristol in 1980 something, early 80s? And I thought, well, I get some unusual messages out of the blue from people on Facebook just because of being publicly available and do work to help people in different ways. So I said, yeah, I was. And the next line was, I think you might be my birth father. All right. And that's the kind of silent space I found myself sitting in for a second, thinking, wow, okay. So 41 and a half years ago, my girlfriend and I at the time, well, it's like a chicken and the egg thing. I can't say she got pregnant without saying that there were things that happened beforehand. But we found ourselves in this situation where she was pregnant and we were expecting a baby, and we were both 18. In fact, I think I was 17 when he was conceived. And, we were kids, right? I mean, the photo of me was maybe a year before, and we were kids. And we had to decide what to do. And we had to try and think for ourselves and to listen to the best advice around for us. And so we made a decision when the baby was born that they would be adopted. And a family who had been trying for some time, a couple who'd been trying for some time, who really desired desperately to have children in their life, that they would have the opportunity, we would have the opportunity to help them to make that dream come true. And, it wasn't as simple as that. Practically, it kind of was straightforward, but emotionally, it was massive. For me, the laws have changed a little bit here in the interim, but it didn't matter about your age. Back then, if you weren't married to the mother of the child you were expecting, or even, they'd been born, the father had no legal rights at all. And I felt really disempowered by this, and by my age. And And I guess because I'd grown up in this Catholic church, a certain amount of environmental guilt and shame. We'd made this happen. We shouldn't have been having sex. I mean, we were enjoying what we were doing. That was fine, and loved each other very much, as in the way that 17 and 8-year-olds do. But we went through, so the 9 months, I held this baby in my arms. We had him in the room. You know, my girlfriend stayed in the hospital maybe for a few extra days. And I possibly gave the time just to say, are you too sure about what you're doing? You know, and I wasn't really sure, but I kept that to myself. And for years, I told myself, I know he's okay. I'm sure he's fine. And probably when he's 18, he'll have a burning desire to come and find me. And I was having a conversation in work with someone one day and was telling my bits about my life. And they said, oh, well, the same thing happened to my friend. And when his child was 14, they came and found him. So I get the calendar out and I'm flicking back the pages thinking, anytime now. But you know what? Nothing happened. And I got all those feelings and I had to put them away again, put them back inside. 18 came, nothing. 21 came, nothing. And I'm going through transitions in my life and lots of changes and different things. And I had this idea that I wanted to be, right, sorted out completely in my life when he contacted me. And I had no idea when that was going to be. And I lived underneath that pressure I put on myself for a long time. And then we got to some years back when I knew he would have been 35. And I don't know what it was, but I made this little turning point and I thought, I'm just going to stop worrying about whether he contacts me in the future or not. Because here, if you've been the parent of a child who's been adopted, you can't go and find them, you can't track them down or anything. But I knew that it would be easy enough to find me at some point in the future if he wanted to. And I let it go. And sometimes when you let things go, then they come back to you. So completely out of the blue, at the beginning of June, I had this message and we started to message and we started to talk and we arranged to meet. And we did, and we met a couple of weeks ago. And it was one of the most amazing, beautiful, it's not a first meeting, it's just been a really long 41 and a half years. And I've been storing up little one-liner catchphrases to break the ice or just in case things were awkward. And I thought some of these are so funny, I've just got to say them anyway. And we got in and we sat down. We were outside this pub, lovely place in the Cotswolds. And I said, first thing I said was, this is big. And he said, yeah. And I said, you've grown. And we kind of, the little bit of ice that was there, we broke. And we sat there and we spoke for hours and hours and hours. But really, you know, coming back, we'd even both shaved our beards off before we met. You know, mine was just about here. He had this really long ZZ Top kind of amazing beard that made him look even more like my dad, funnily enough. But it was the like the synchronicities in the chart. So I remember when I messaged you, Kristin, and I said, guess what's just happened? Right. I mean, no one could have guessed. And we looked at the charts and we started to see these synchronicities and the transiting planets lining up. I think we've got when you want to go there, we've got another chart to look at. But okay.
Joe, can I just say a couple of things? Like, let's just point out a couple of archetypes here. One, 11th house can be adoption or, you know, uncles, aunts, any kind of, you know, family member. What is it? I forget. The words are going to come to me in a minute. But also, I find this fascinating that your son reached out to you through the interwebs, which is also the 11th house, right? The internet. Like, you can't make this up. And also, you know, your sun sextiles your Uranus and your Pluto. And to me, you know, I think when we look at the transits in a minute, it'll be really interesting to look at that and how that's being ignited, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to say was, yes, your moon is an Aries moon, but you have a North Node in Cancer, a Sun in Cancer, a Cancer rising, and a Mercury in Cancer. They're all ruled by your moon. And whenever I talked to you recently, something you said to me, which I feel like really demonstrates this, is you said, I felt like I gave birth to him too. Even though I'm a man, I felt like I gave birth to him. And
Yeah.
so that's really indicative in this chart. So I wanted to point that out. And this is definitely something you guys have been through before, I feel like. I mean, the moon is trining that south node. This was going to happen. It was destined to happen for you guys to meet back up, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Or fated, I guess would be a better way to say that. So, and we can go to the next chart unless you guys want to add something to his chart.
Stacie or Rob, you guys want to say anything?
Well, I think Jordyn hit the nail on the head with the whole, it was fated to happen. There's, you know, you have a South Node in Capricorn. And also, Joe, that Venus retrograde, you know, it's about a redo with relationships, and it's not always romantic relationships. It's a relationship of some sort. So some lessons, you know, karmic lessons with your son that you both had to go through. So that kind of soul agreement before this incarnation, you can see in terms of if in your chart and even your son's chart, where there was that agreement that it would be, you would meet back up again at a certain point, and that suddenness, yes, like Jordyn explained, that relationship with your moon and Uranus, it was always going to be not on your timing, it'd be on the timing for the soul. So as much as you planned, you know, Aries moon, it's interesting because an Aries moon just kind of goes with it. But that 29 degrees, you're at a, you know, an end of an evolutionary cycle. So you're closing that whole emotional development when it comes to the Aries moon. And so embracing that polarity point of Libra would have been very much about objectifying and being more of the observer until the right time for your son, essentially, because it was more, I would say, those both your lessons, that timing was always going to be out of the blue, like you said. But yeah, it was just a beautiful story, if I'm honest, Joe. It really, like, when I read it, it really did pull the heartstrings. But yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
and
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Stacie. Sorry.
I also found it interesting, Joe, that you set an intention for yourself to kind of work yourself out and get everything right. And you can really see that in your chart, you know, with your Pluto being in Virgo, your South Node being in the 6th. And it's clear that you're somebody who has really developed a life and based on service and specifically helping other people find their individuality in a natural way, just because of the shamanic nature of what you do. And you know, that Cancer in the 12th ruling, I'm getting lost. Oh yeah, ruling your South Node just really shows that you surrendered and trust, you know, a humble, patient trust to the universe to allow that event to happen when it was time. And now you have this whole new journey ahead of you where you can, you know, help him become the individual that he naturally is.
Yes. Stacie, you were reading my mind with that Virgo. So that's what I remember seeing, is that progressed moon on his sun sextiling the Pluto Uranus, not really the Uranus, but close enough. But it reminds me of how you did say, you were like, I wanted to make sure that I had it right before I met him, that I, you know, this, that, and blah, blah, blah. And to me, that's like the Virgo nature. And then you have this progression come around of a parental role of where someone is also reaching out because they're wanting that nurturing quality. And your souls are ready to receive that from each other. And that's also seen with like the first house, energy through the progression, and then Pluto through the seventh house, that there's a mutual reciprocity that's wanting to come through, that both of y'all were ready. You know, you felt it. It's like you were energetically connected on some type of level. I mean, even a moon in the 11th and an Aries, like that can be someone who desires something so much and is able to manifest it in some type of a way. And it just goes to show that regardless of your child just now coming around, each other's souls felt that. And obviously he was desiring that as well, or else he wouldn't have reached out. And that's the nature of Aries in the 11th house to me. So
it struck me too is seeing that 11th house, how it was that separation first, or the willingness to separate out of that desire to do right, that then created the right connection point, the right emotional connection at the right time. In my view, as a way of reconnecting to a part of yourself that had been taken away or distanced from, seeing that 12th house completion, and how it had this beautiful reconnection to your son, and that theme of what you sometimes have to let go first, or you have to distance first in order for that emotional repair to then happen at the right time. So to me, it really struck me or pulled at my heartstrings because of um, the letting go first, or the ability to, out of an intention to do right, and trusting that the right thing would then happen at its own time.
Right, at the time when, you know, like the transition of a week or so, when as a baby he was being looked after and cared for by another family, like a foster family, while the process went through. Um, I I had thoughts and feelings about, you know, maybe there's a way I could step in, and maybe I could have him if no one else wanted him. But I knew that wasn't true. It wasn't that no one wanted him. You know, it was my feeling of my loss, or pending loss, and at the same time knowing that this was a good decision for him, that he would be with an older, more mature couple. And also, it allowed his birth mother, my girlfriend, and myself um, to have that transition from childhood, teenage into adulthood, so that we could make that journey with our life. And you go forwards with everything that comes from the experience. But I thought some of my thoughts a little bit selfish if I'd gone through with them. And some of them, you know, if there had been a way to look after him as a baby boy on my own, how difficult that would have been for everyone else around who wanted to move forwards with their own life in a particular way. So there were lots of letting goes and trying to see the big picture. Um,
Joe, can I ask a question?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think that demonstrates his Venus in the 12th house, though. It's a supreme form of giving, of knowing what is actually meant to be given, right?
Yeah.
Even if it looks like that's not giving at all. So I just wanted to say that. Sorry, Rob.
That's okay. I'm just curious about your relationship with your own father, if you don't mind answering
Yeah.
that.
Um, well, my father's passed now,
Mm.
but I idolized him as a little boy. I took everything he said as kind of fact. Even when my friend and I, we were kids, and some bigger boys had been, you know, pushing us around a bit. And I said, we're going to tell my dad. So we went to tell my dad. And he said, all right, he said, I'm going to teach you Kung Fu. And we thought, this is great because this cartoon Hong Kong Fooey and there's all this stuff on the telly. And we're going, oh, I said, my dad's going to teach us Kung Fu. And after a little while, I realized that in order to teach us Kung Fu, first he would have to know Kung Fu. It just was never going to happen. But everything he said, I believed. And he had what is, I think, a wonderful sense of humor that all of his brothers thought was a terrible sense of humor. And my uncle said to me, oh my God, he says, you know, if your father's sense of humor. And I thought that was great. But, you know, in teen years, we drifted a little bit more apart. And I think there was a bit of friction when I said, you know, I'm not going to go to church anymore. It's just not something I want to do. And he was angry and upset because he was really worried that my soul was somehow going to be damned, and he didn't want any harm for his boy. I'm the first of the two children. I have a sister, the two that they had, but they've been trying for years, literally years, to have a baby. And when my mum died more recently, and when my sister and I were going through her papers and things, I found all of these hospital invitation letters. And it would be, you know, one would be 1960, and then 1961 and 1962 and so on, and some back into the 50s. Dear Mrs. Malloy, we invite you to your antenatal appointment. And she had had all of these pregnancies and lost every baby until I came along. And so from their side, while it seemed to me more my mother and my nan were very protective, you know, but my nan's, I shone also because I was the boy, and my sister, we were talking about this last week, you know, she was like, she takes second place because she's a girl. But yeah, in lots of ways, my dad and I were really close. I don't think he had the health and the fitness to do a lot of things that I wanted to do. Although one time, you know, these days in children's playgrounds, outdoor playgrounds, we have risk assessment and safety management and these kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
But back then we didn't. And the bigger the slide, the better. The faster the roundabout would go, the better. So we had this tower that you had to climb up the side on this ladder and to get to the top. And then it was a caged area, and you could get onto the slide, and it would go whoosh, all the way down. And years later, they built a swimming pool next to it. And the height of the roof of the swimming pool, which must have been 3 stories of like a regular house, 3 floors, was you could see over the top of the swimming pool from the top of the slide. And I'd got up to the top of the slide this one day, and I got stuck. I couldn't come down. So my dad came up, and I remember him sitting on the slide and putting me on his lap. And we went down, and we went down this fast steel polished slide. And we went down the slopey bit, and then there was a slowing down flat bit, and went all the way along the flat bit, and we got to the end of the flat bit, and we carried on in the thin air until eventually gravity took over, and we landed on the ground, and I was on his lap, and the base of his spine, his kind of coccyx, just landed on the concrete, and I wanted to get straight back up and go up on the slide again. And he for a bit. So
Yeah.
yeah, he was my hero, and the end of his life came very, very quickly. That he had a problem with his heart that was misdiagnosed, and then when they did work out what was going on, they fast-tracked him, and he was going to have this triple bypass. And to start with, it was going to be in a few days, and then it was going to be tomorrow afternoon, and then we got to the hospital that morning. They said he's going in now for theatre. And I'd nipped off to make a phone call to the priest on behalf of my mum, and they were in the waiting room, and I came back up on my own. And this trolley came out of the ward and stopped in the corridor in front of the lift door, and there he was. They were taking him straight down, no time to waste. And the last he said to me he was worried about things like the roof on the outside loo that went between the house and the garage. And I told him what I felt was the world's biggest lie. I said, everything's going to be okay. You know, and the roof was okay because I did fix the roof. But
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was just curious because your South Node in Capricorn, the father energy being a key stepping stone in this life's evolution. So just to get a bit more of an objective perspective, but thank you for that.
Just for people watching who may be new to astrology, should we explain the expanded chart, which wheel is which, so people can plot this for themselves?
Yeah, Jordyn, I think the middle one's the progressed, right?
Yes,
Progress.
and the outer wheel is the transits. So I will point out a couple of things, and then I think you guys could talk about it. So Mars, transiting Mars on his natal moon. I think that this is fascinating. Look at this Venus on his Venus, the sun on his Venus as well. And then, I mean, Mercury's on his Mars. What else is there?
I mean, he's got that transiting Uranus is sextiling his progressed Mars and Venus
Yeah.
in the first house. And that's the surprise. It's conjunct his progressed Jupiter. That in combination with transiting Saturn, forming a grand trine with his Mercury, which rules his Mars and Venus and his Virgo third house planets. So Saturn, grand trine with Mercury and Neptune. So this is the thing that was invisible becoming visible. The child, right, that he hadn't seen forever since he was born, fifth house, Neptune, so Saturn in Pisces, ruled by that Neptune in the fifth house of children, trining his Mercury. He gets this message, grand trine there, message, unexpected message from his son after all this time. And it becomes healing for both of them. Very, very powerful progressed chart with transits. It's fantastic. It's just a blow mind. I mean,
Absolutely. I also even like the return of the Venus return, right? And he had these choices when this baby was born, and he was trying to do the supreme form of giving thing, doing what he felt on a soul level was right, and just putting it out there that if it's meant to be, this child's going to come back around. And guess what? You get a Venus return that's conjunct a sun, right? Which is the natural ruler of the fifth house, child. And here you have this child's coming in. And of course, again, Uranus transiting the 11th house, it's conjunct the progressed Jupiter, and then again that Mars conjunct his moon. So again, through the interwebs, sudden, child that one gave up for adoption. I love it.
all right. Let's transition. Thank you so much, Joe.
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity to share and to listen to your interpretations too.
Okay,
so one idea.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to share that, we are doing this show in between a new moon and a full moon every month. And, a lot of people do new moon ceremonies, but we felt like the full moon every month would be most appropriate, since it tends to unearth a lot of emotion for all of us. And so we wanted just to talk about the upcoming Capricorn full moon on July 20th or 21st. It's
21st.
Early in the morning, I think, here. And so we can help everybody listening to work with these energies in your life and to evolve through this transiting full moon this month.
I love it. Rob, do you want to speak about this?
Yeah, for sure. Because the Capricorn moon, full moon will conjunct my natal moon. So it's, it's good, like full circle for myself. So with full moons, we know it's, it's like endings. There's a cycle that started from the new moon to the full moon. And in Capricorn, for me, I always look at it as, where we have to gain self-mastery, self-responsibility, and about structure in our life. And this particular full moon, I've actually put a sentence that I felt was perfect in terms of the slogan for this full moon. And where did I write it? Yeah. The time is now to master the emotional reality that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And the reason for that is because the ruler of this full moon, with the moon being in Capricorn, is that Saturn retrograde in Pisces. And, you know, in this chart, it's moving through the 6th house. Jordyn, this is the chart for Greenwich, right? In
Yeah.
terms of the Greenwich timing. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's sort of like we are doing the work on our own individual journeys, which essentially will have a collective message. And that's where you have that Cancer in the 10th house, the sun being a Cancer in the 10th house in this chart, is where we're collectively remembering that though we are a species of, you know, living a human experience, and we're here on evolving through the emotional body. And we've got Neptune in this chart also at 29 degrees Pisces. And I feel the last sort of couple of full moons have been very much about working towards closing cycles of development, moving towards the next chapter in the soul's evolution, which very much links to Pluto in Aquarius, which right now is retrograde, and it will move back towards into Capricorn. I believe it's in October, right? It goes back into Capricorn.
November.
I forgot that. November. Yeah, so it will go back towards this particular full moon. So remembering this, what's happening in your life at this time, will be key to what happens in November. So yeah, so this is the key points that I picked up with this full moon that's coming up in a couple of weeks' time.
Right, Pluto backs into Capricorn in September.
Is it September? Okay, getting my dates
And then
completely
it-
mixed up.
And then it stations forward in November, excuse me.
Yeah,
Right.
stations, so it's like early September till the middle of November, so 2.5 months long. So whatever is coming up, yes, at this full moon will be really active
Yeah.
in the fall.
Yeah.
I actually, yeah.
I feel like, so with Pluto conjunct the moon here, Pluto in Aquarius is where we're wanting to liberate from anything that we've over-identified with, especially whenever it speaks to conditioning, right? And that Capricorn full moon is at an anaretic degree. Both of these are sitting in the 4th house. So things around where we might have identified with old sources of security that now are needing to be our own authority in life. And that Saturn retrograde in Pisces in the 6th house is about facilitating this process of purging the old in order to heal and to restructure what needs to be restructured within our consciousness. This is also seen with Saturn's ruler retrograde at an anaretic degree. You know, the moon and Neptune are sextile each other. So we could really have some exposing happen of understanding what it is we've over-identified with, and then a need to be our own authority, to ask and answer our own questions, to look at whether or not we've been over-identifying with the values of others, seeing as Pluto's ruler is Uranus in the 8th house and in Taurus, and the need to liberate from those dynamics through understanding our own unique individuality. I could say so much. I also think it's really important to speak about how the nodes are paradoxical. Something new is wanting to start, stemming from the culmination that's happening with this full moon. And it can be around the ways in which we look at other people, right? New patterns, Aries, of dealing with our own relationships with other people is wanting to happen. If anyone else wants to speak to some of this, go ahead.
Just to add a little bit too, I can really see the dynamic of reflection coming up with these transits in terms of the 29 moon Capricorn conjunct Pluto and Uranus. It's almost like a very deep reflection on what can I do differently in order to bring these things to fulfillment. Like I wanted to do this, I was doing it in this way. What's in an alternative way for me to do that, to do the very same thing? And in terms of breaking out of older structures or older models that are meant to come to completion, seeing that 29-degree Capricorn, more objectivity in terms of how to reinvent things. I can make the structure work this way. That can be relative to relationships, that can be our role in the world, reflecting on our upbringing, on what conditioned us, what imprint did we have, And what can I now put into motion that would reflect who I'm becoming or this new cycle? So from my point of view, it's really to keep it positive. If we go into depression or if we go into too heavy a state, to really try and distance, or to, like, let's say, think about watching yourself like you're watching a movie. I'm watching myself do this, and I really want to do it this way now, and I can't. I'm watching myself and I'm telling myself through this reflection, it's now going to turn into this. Because it's important from my point of view to really keep it positive when we're going through this type of inner reflection, because we can get immobilized, or it can turn into immobilizing. And so I also see that North Node in Aries is keeping things going. So reflection versus depression.
All right, I'm going to do an Aries. I'm going to do an Aries thing real quick. I'm super excited about this full moon because the North Node is in Aries and it's ruled by Mars, right? And Pluto is trining Mars exactly. So you talked, Deva, about what can happen when you're either too much in the past or too much in reflection, or just feeling weighted down by emotion, which can happen for sure with a Capricorn full moon. Maybe I've run into this. Maybe there's this I'm running out of time feeling with the Capricorn. Oh my gosh, I'm this age or that age, or this isn't. The feeling of running out of time is so common. But with Pluto trining Mars, this is one of my favorite transits. As someone said, Kristin, what is your favorite pairing of all? I mean, this has got to be a top 3 for me, because Mars rules your desires and it's pulling from the soul, Pluto, and it's giving you the fire, the motivation, the instinctual motion or movement. It's moving what hasn't been able to be shifted at all. It kind of it just gets you out of bed quickly, frankly. I don't think it allows you to wallow so much. But what the full moon in Capricorn will show you is what's real. What is real? What is possible? And not, some fantasy thing, but what is real and what is possible. It is sextiling Neptune, which also can help you reach for a greater ideal, reach for the potential of something. So I'm excited about this, for everybody. As long as you follow that Mars, I mean, you're going to be able to cover some serious ground emotionally.
Yeah, I feel like this full moon is also, will spark a lot of ideas for people about how to move forward. Not only
Exactly.
with the
Options.
trine from Mars to Pluto, but also all of the 11th house energy, and then also Uranus square to that Mercury. It's like, if we take a moment to do Capricorn and to self-reflect without being self-deprecating, right? A lot of Capricorn, we can be very self-deprecating. Or seeing as Saturn is in Pisces in that 6th house, feeling like a loss of faith. This actually reminds me of a conversation that you and I just had, Kristin. I'm not going to go into my personal stuff too much, but I was talking about, I've been grieving the loss of something. And Kristin was like, yes, but it's going to birth a new dream or a new, something new. And I feel like this Capricorn full moon is, with the Pisces stuff, it's where we're facing this void, right? Of like what once was there isn't there anymore, but that trine from Pluto to Mars and then Uranus square Mercury. And it's like all of a sudden there's something there that is being sparked for us to move forwards. It doesn't have to feel so heavy anymore. Like, oh, I just lost all of this, or what I once had fantasized about or an ideal about. Once we confront it head on with our own reality, like maybe I wasn't living in the truth. Maybe I was being like what I like to call Pollyanna. Once we face that and we take responsibility for it, because this is what this moon, I feel like, really wants us to do. It's like the ideas from the soul that are like in our desire nature can be sparked. And then we can take that as a forward momentum, And so that Uranus and Taurus, though, wants us to listen. Like what is emanating from within? What, on a soul level, what is the direction now that we're meant to take? And I see that also with Uranus sextile Neptune.
But Jordyn, it also can be, it could just come suddenly. You might think
exactly.
it's been building. It could just be a sudden awareness, information coming through. So just being open to that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the breakthroughs can happen very fast under this full moon.
Mm-hmm.
Stacie, I know you have something to say.
I don't, you've all covered everything.
Oh,
No, I don't have anything to add.
all right, that was awesome, you guys.
I love it. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. And okay, so this is the moon movie time. And we had this great idea to give a really nurturing expression and then a more, well, what is the word you would say, Kristin?
I
I'm
would
going to
just say
articulate
an
that.
evolved expression of an Aries energy. And
Yes.
Gandhi was not an Aries, but he has Mars in the first. And then a patriarchal reaction to life, a woman's patriarchal reaction. So Dave, let me start with the patriarchal one, and Deva, you can talk about Gandhi.
Perfect.
But I just recently rewatched Jane Got a Gun with Natalie Portman. It is literally my favorite Western, of course, of all. And if anybody ever watches this, you'll understand why. First of all, I love a happy ending. So I'll just start with that. But here, she had to get Aries like in order to protect her family. And, there's some violence. It's a Western, but, it doesn't creep me out because there's no scary music and it's not at night. So then I'm okay. But I really love watching her as an actress just take charge in such an Aries way. And a gunslinger is really Scorpio, obviously, but the lower octave is Mars to Pluto, ruler of Scorpio. And so I see this as a Pluto Mars flick. And it really does cover the entire cardinal axis. So if you want to see the cardinal axis alive and on fire, check this movie out. And it is obviously a patriarchal time. So with that in mind, I think you'll really enjoy it, especially how it ends. There is justice, but there's also a happy ending. So Deva, Gandhi.
Yeah, I just think it's so great that we have these two ways of talking about the archetype. And yeah, no, I chose Gandhi because I really felt that he was an evolved example of how to move things forward and the courage to chart new pathways. And he was doing it through speaking out against violence. And as an example, when there was conflict between native native Indians going on a hunger strike until it stopped. And in terms of when there was a tax put on salt from the British that just killed them economically, instead of fighting out in terms of fighting or creating yet more violence, he encouraged others to simply walk down and get your salt. Just or if he needed to go to prison for something, fine. When he started out as a lawyer and he tried to advocate for justice through speaking out against those who were persecuted or underprivileged, and he also found a new way of doing that through advocating the new nonviolent approach through those strategies, whether it was a hunger strike, whether it was just defying a law that was unjust and then accepting whatever came through. And I believe it was one of his quotes that said, you pray, you don't pray for protection, but you pray for courage to do what you have to do. So if this results from that, if that results from that, fine, but you don't obey with what's unjust. And I found that very Aries in terms of a new direction and a counterpoint to what had just been a very violent chapter from my understanding.
He was able to be effective by being peaceful.
Yeah, exactly.
By uniting the will of the people is how he did that through that polarity, the Libra polarity. Yeah. Wonderful evolved example of an Aries energy. Mars and Venus both in the first house he has.
Can we just say, like, Deva, I think we always talk about this, how, I mean, Kristin even said it, there's a card catalog in your head dealing with movies and music. And I really am always like kind of in awe how, I mean, I've even gone to you in the past and been like, hey, I'm thinking about this. What's a great chart? And you're like, here, like it's a moon in the third house, I think. Like you just have it there. And I'm always very impressed with it because it ends up being exactly what we need to be talking about. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for allowing me to do that.
Hey, Joe, I realized we skimmed over you on that full moon. Sorry about that. But any any thoughts about either one of the movies?
Well, I don't know Jane Got a Gun,
Me either.
but I do love movies. You know, a good movie is a portrayal of just archetypes, you know, that manifest within us and people around us, and they help us to create new mythologies to understand our soul's journey, our life. And I think if we look around, maybe some of the people who we would expect to be the leaders, the heroes, they're missing. You know, we have a lot of corrupt heroes, but we need to have an understanding of the nature of archetypes and how they work within our lives, so that we can create new mythologies to live by. You know, real ones.
Yeah, new heroes. Here.
Yeah, that was beautifully said. Okay, Sue, let's go to our ending quote by Khalil Gibran. And this is, "Life without liberty is like a body without spirit." And this is definitely a perfect quote for Aries, I feel like. So if anyone wants to know more about Deva's book, here's a picture of her book. You can find it on Amazon. This is, like I said, the inspiration for doing this series really came out from Deva's dedication to doing this work. So again, thank you, Deva. I don't think that this would have came about, or not now, if you hadn't have done this. And then also, if you are wanting to be a student of the Jeffrey Wolf Green School of Evolutionary Astrology, you can go to that website and you can get the correspondence course. And there's other ways to study this channel, all of the books. And yeah, Sue, I guess you could put down the slides so we can just all say bye. And I appreciate every single one of you guys showing up. I love doing this. I'm really fired up to be doing this with all of you. I love collaborating, and yes, thank you. I have an immense amount of gratitude for each one of you, and I learn so much from you guys every time we come together. So
Likewise. Jordyn, I was about to do this. I was about to plug the book, and
I mean, I have it too. I'm like, it's
I know
right
exactly,
here.
right? It is.
Yes.
It's a great resource, honestly. Yeah.
It
Even
is.
my non-astrology friends, they've bought this because
Oh.
they see me talk about the moon so much that they ended up buying it, like, because they just want to know. Like, fine, they're reading their moon signs and going, "Huh, this makes sense." I'm like, really? Yeah.
Even though they're not astrology friends, that's great.
No, yeah, because
Yay.
I'm a moon gal. I've always been a moon gal. But yeah.
Well, also, I think for a lot of, well, I'm going to let my Capricorn show. I will see people post things about astrology, and I love that it gets people in the door, but the depth that evolutionary astrology has. So oftentimes I think before I found this, what I would run up against is it would be so generalized. I would be like, that could be anybody, right? Like that, what?
It's the horoscopes in the paper.
Yes, but your book is really, if you really want to have a clear understanding of your moon and have a foundation to be like, oh, and it doesn't feel generalized, that's, I mean, I could talk on and on about this book. I read it all the time. So,
Well, it's something I want to do. One thing that I really appreciate about this book in particular is Deva's ability to, I don't know why I'm getting emotional. I just appreciate your gift so much. Deva, you have an ability to communicate with such simplicity, because one thing that people can fall into with evolutionary astrology is overwhelm. And in this book, I really found that the most important bottom lines are really distilled and communicated in a way that can be understood. So thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
love your Pisces moon, Stacie. Feel you. Yes, it's so true. So, and we all evolve through these waters. All of us evolve through our moon waters, wherever the moon is. So this is the beginning of our journey together. We will be back next month to discuss moon in Taurus or moon in the second house. And I look forward to seeing all of you again there and everybody else who's tuned in. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for
Bye.
watching.